like it or not, true or not, I have been welcomed to the world of living as an HIV-positive person. The accusation in the police report was that I had not disclosed my HIV status prior to conducting this relationship. The sentence associated with this could be as much as 30 years in prison.
More than 30 states have statutes criminalizing the exposure or transmission of HIV. This patchwork of legislation varies state to state, both in terms of punishment and what behaviors are criminalized.
In the 90s, the Ryan White Care Act made it necessary for states to certify that they had some sort of legal mechanism to address intentional exposure with HIV.
About half the states said, we have assault statutes, we have public health statutes, we're fine. And then about half the states went out and created a patchwork of crazy legislation.
Very few of them limited it to intentional transmission or exposure. Instead, what they did was created far more broad laws that said if anybody didn't disclose that they had HIV and had sex with someone, or some variation of what they call sex, then it would be against the law.
People call them HIV transmission statutes. They're not about transmission. Almost all the prosecutions are about failing to disclose. So if a person with HIV cannot prove that he or she disclosed to a partner, then they're at risk.
Darren was accused by a former lover who was not a one-night stand, was not a one-week stand. This was a relationship that went on for months. Darren's being charged under Florida Statute 384-24-2, targeting specific individuals who are HIV positive, who are having a sexual relationship with somebody and have not notified that person that they're HIV positive. It doesn't matter whether somebody was exposed, it doesn't matter whether somebody used a condom, it doesn't matter whether you're trying to pass on the virus. It just matters your status and whether or not you had sex and conveyed your status.
This is someone I was actually planning on spending the rest of my life with. We were shopping for a multi-million-dollar farm, and so you can only imagine the shock of all this.
The relationship goes bad. The gentleman tries to reconcile with Darren on up until the last moment. And when Darren finally says, it's over, it's not ever going to come back together, I need you to leave the house, within an hour or two, he's down at the sheriff's office filing a police report.
I'm in the horse business, but every horse is attached to a few people, so this is a people business. The story on the street is I have AIDS and gave AIDS to this, poor unsuspecting kid. He's not a kid, he's a grown man and has a successful career. I don't have AIDS, and not only doesn't he have AIDS, he's not HIV positive.
Any criminal charge is awfully serious. But when you're facing a criminal charge for something that has such a negative stigma, and I'll use Darren as an example, he gets sponsorships pulled. He gets clinics canceled. He may not be asked to appear at this event or that event.
When a family member requests of you to distance yourself from their children, that's pretty heavy. And it's those kind of, again, how do you ever come away from that? Those are permanent things that have happened in your life that you'll never quite have the same relationship with those people.
HIV criminalization is a problem in all sorts of ways. They undercut the most fundamental message about sexual health, which is that each of us must be responsible for protecting ourselves. They contribute enormously to stigma. There is nothing that is a more extreme manifestation of stigma than when it's enshrined in the law.
The stigma and discrimination related to HIV, and in some cases the fear and the myths related to HIV, makes it very difficult sometimes for rational conversations to be had about the risks of transmission and what the evidence actually tells us about the risks of transmission.
It's that fear of you as a person, even though you've not done anything to them, you've not affected their life in any other way other than having this disease.
I think that there are a lot of misconceptions about HIV in Iowa, how it's transmitted, how infectious people are, can you be in the same room with them?
Well, that bike would fit you. This bike is a step-through frame.
I moved here because I wanted to live in a smaller city that I could be more of a pedestrian and more of a cyclist. Iowa City seemed like a perfect place to be able to do that.
I'm from Iowa, and I love Iowa. We have gay marriage. It's a really great place. But unfortunately, Iowa has one of the most repressive criminalization statutes in the country. I could be subject to 25 years in prison.
On a night in January 2007, I was riding my bicycle home from my job. The driver of a minivan pulled up behind me so fast that, I panicked. And he jerked back into the lane adjacent to mine, the left lane, roared past me, and then jerked back into the lane. I ride up to his car window, probably not a very smart thing to do, and I rapped on his window. It was cold, I was angry, and I wanted to give the guy a piece of my mind. The driver gets out of his car with a 4-foot-long telescopic windshield scraper and starts slamming the right side of my head at least 4 times. I'm bleeding. I still have my bicycle between my legs. I still have my backpack. And then he started yelling at me, poking me in the face. And at some point, his finger actually went in my mouth. I just bit down. I thought, I've got to get this person's license number because I'm calling the police. My first mistake. The Iowa City Police Department decided to charge me with the assault.
Everyone agrees that the intent to harm someone should be prosecuted. But that is rare. That's not what the bulk of these cases are about. Very few of these cases are about anyone intending to hurt someone else. About a quarter of the cases are for things like spitting or scratching that don't pose any risk of transmission.
Issues such as biting or spitting, which may have been appropriate 30 years ago, really are inappropriate now because we realize that HIV is not readily or easily or transmitted via these routes.
By a vote of 4-3, the county attorneys decided not to charge Donald under Iowa's HIV criminalization statute, which carries a mandatory 25-year sentence. However, they did prosecute him for assault causing injury, and his HIV status was used as evidence in his trial.
The judge denied our motion to suppress the issue of HIV because he said that it went to the severity of my response to the situation.
A jury found him guilty of assault, but instead of prison, the judge sentenced him to community service, a fine, and an anger management class.
People need to know that this happened, and that if it can happen to some privileged white guy like me, imagine how people who can't defend themselves deal with this issue.
Gregory Smith was African American, he was poor, and he had HIV. And just as important, Gregory was out about being gay.
Gregory was my older brother, so we were close. He was a big brother, always there.
And Gregory was somewhat of a flirt. That's what I remember most about Gregory, and he was really cute.
Gregory was in prison for a burglary charge for 5 years. And pretty much that's where it all started. When I found out he was HIV positive, that's when he had a problem with one of the correctional officers up at Camden County. And we went to visit him, and he told us, the guard said that he bit him. But when we went to visit him, Gregory said he didn't bite him. He was on the gurney. He wanted to get treated in the hospital.
He was accused of spitting at a guard, biting a guard, things that you really can't, get infected for HIV for.
Gregory Smith was charged with attempted murder, assault, and terroristic threats for allegedly biting and spitting at guards at the Camden County Jail in June of 1989.
When they came out HIV, that he had HIV, and the prison guard was saying that now he might have HIV, the hearing and everything, it went nuts. And I guess the judge just seen it one way.
A jury convicted Smith on all the charges, and the judge sentenced him to 25 years in jail.
It was crazy. The courtroom, just everybody started yelling. I was one of them, just yelling, "No way, you gotta be crazy. You're kidding me."
When at that time we all realized that was a death sentence. It was a death sentence.
We visited him quite often. It was rough on me. He rode home a lot, so it was rough on him and the family. Last time we visited him, talking to him, he was all right. You know, he was all right. And then it's when they called us and said that he was in a room, that he had fell, and we went and visited him, and it went downhill from there.
After serving 13 years of his 25-year sentence, Gregory Smith died in prison on November 10th, 2003.
Traditionally or historically, the largest proportion of these juvenile criminal statutes have been prosecuted amongst African-American heterosexual men. That profile is starting to change more recently, where we see more gay and bisexual men being prosecuted for these HIV criminalization exposures. But what's more is that we're finding that these circumstances are really heavily impacting individuals that are already in the incarceration system or the correctional system.
As a person of color, it's nothing new to me. It's not shocking. It's a way of life for us. This is what we know goes on. This is how we've lived, as people of color that are poor. This is how we've lived our lives. This is our communities. This is what happens when our men and women go to jail. They get the harshest sentence.
Until we resolve homophobia, until we deal with racism, until we deal with classism, until all of those things are resolved, I really don't think we're going to get rid of stigma and we're going to deal with the impact that that has on the inclination to prosecute people who are positive.
Very few people have really looked at the impact of HIV exposure laws on people who have HIV or those at risk for the virus. So I decided to actually look at the impact of these laws on people who have HIV. What we found in Michigan, where this first study was conducted, that there was no independent effect of the law on the disclosure behavior or safer sex behavior of people who have HIV. So those who were aware of the law were not any more likely to disclose that they had HIV to sexual partners or to practice safer sex than those who weren't aware of the law.
We just want to suggest that states look at what works from a public health perspective, because that's what a legislator's job is, what a state health department's job is to protect the health of the public. And so that should be our paramount concern.
And today we're releasing our national HIV/AIDS strategy.
A very important development was this summer with President Obama's national HIV/AIDS strategy. It included language calling for people to take a look at these criminalization statutes and how they are contributing to stigma. This is the first time we've had any kind of federal leadership acknowledging that these statutes are a real problem, that we need to do something about them. And I think that has kind of given permission for a lot of agencies that have not been involved in this work specifically to do so.
The Positive Justice Project was launched on September 21st to create a national movement to repeal HIV-specific criminal laws and to end prosecutions and arrests of people with HIV that really are based on their HIV status.
It's a multi-year campaign, and we're just at the beginning stages of it. So we need to mobilize the LGBT community, the AIDS service organization community, all sorts of people who are involved in the public health community, communities of color, to understand the damage these statutes are doing, not just to people with HIV, but what they're doing more broadly in contributing to the spread of the virus.